All right, let me turn my video off too. So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. We got a super exciting presenter tonight, Tiffany Faaee. She is former USA Rugby captain. She's was a WPL player for the New York club. She's coached with Rugby United New York and the New York Women's Premier League club. She's current head coach for the men's and women's college, Monroe College, and she's currently program director for Roots Rugby and the New York Rugby Youth Club. So thanks for being here, Tiff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think, during these times where, especially us as a community, we're all finding unique ways to stay connected and engaged during this pandemic. I really, really appreciate the outreach to come in and join you guys tonight. So thanks so much for having me. So, we can get straight into it. We thought, I sort of learned of what all the other coaches are doing each week, and I thought I'd just squeeze in there with a few rugby fundamentals, during COVID. Being a Kiwi, we're really big on being evasive, and avoiding contact. So to be honest, I'm using this opportunity to especially hone in on those skills, because I don't normally get that chance, during the season, because as much as we want to be process driven, it's because they're short and they're very competitive. We can be very outcome focused. So I'm sure some of you guys are doing the same thing and using this chance, without the competition and without having to name rosters. It's a really good chance to build that foundation, and work on those values that you don't normally get the opportunity to focus on. So yeah, I guess Amanda sort of mentioned that some of you guys are sort of going through and wondering how to approach your practices during COVID. And for me, in New York City, we've been shut down since March. And around June or July, I started meeting, a couple of my players. And it still wasn't quite open yet, but I'm bringing that up because I think all our journeys are different, and the players we have are all going through different circumstances. So it's not about putting a blanket over rugby in general and going, this is how you should coach during COVID. I think us sort of collaborating and sharing some different ideas, and then you can take what you can that you think is suitable for your group. So yeah, so getting into it straight away, what's your priority this season? And like I mentioned already, it's going to be very different for all of us. Some of us are doing it to just check in, on our club, on our peers. Some of us are doing it for player engagement. Some of us are doing it to recruit, that can be our priority. And then, I know most of us are trying to find ways to improve and develop our skills, because this doesn't happen often, and we'd all like to sort of hit the next season opening, hit the ground running. And then the last one, which is my Monroe, it's my job, right? So that's why I'm at work. We were told sort of in August that we are going back in September. So a lot of us were kind of just trying to figure out how to make it work. And in the end, it's about having those students who are on campus studying what we can do to make their experience, pleasant, and using rugby to do that. So I don't know if you guys sort of have any other reasons that you think of during this time for why you would be out there coaching rugby that I may have missed. It would be cool to hear from you guys of what you're sort of going through, or what sort of feedback you're getting from your clubs or players. Is there a chat here? Well, just chime in whenever. I don't know if you're all on mute, but yeah. Be cool to have this super interactive. It can be really awkward when I'm just talking by myself and don't hear anything. So yeah, those are the priorities. And then again, why you're out there can impact sort of what session you have, right? So if you're after player engagement and you're still not confident with them being close, then it's maybe inviting everyone around. You're just sitting around, in a circle and just chatting. Like I've had a couple of sessions like that with some other members of the club. And then it's, again, reading the comfort levels of each of your players, right? Some of them will reach out to you direct and go, coach, I'm all good, come and do hands. But yeah, again, just reading your audience and what's needed. So
Andy added that he's out there because he's got players who are missing social interactions. So to give that back to the kids.
yeah, that's huge too, right? That was the main reason why I went out there earlier in June, July, because as I was reaching out to my players, you know, they're all coping with it differently. And I'm very fortunate. I have a bike, so I didn't have to jump on the subway, and I don't have anyone that's high risk at home. So I knew I was in a situation where, you know, being careful, I could go out and for an hour or two, just let this player have that outlet. And us as coaches, you know, we're always, especially with rugby, we do get attached like that. And, you know, we tend to focus on the human versus the athlete. And again, going back to COVID allowing us that opportunity. So so overall, like I put together sort of 3 slides going through why I think youth rugby is key for the growth of our game. I'm sure none of these will be new to you all, but there was a couple of coaches that a couple of courses that I've done, and these were some notes that really resonated with me and the group that I work with. So maybe it'll help anyone out there. So obviously the ages 5 to 7. I don't think anyone here is coaching that young, but that's my goal, is to have the little ones at this age coaching, and then sort of growing from there. But identifying that at that age, right, boys and girls have equal ability. And when we're presenting skills, it's simple, it's fun, it's varied, and we're working with large muscle motor skills. Obviously changing activities frequently. And then at that age, they all like to test him, her, themselves, you know, but often this like a public failure. So I'm sure some of you who are parents would agree with some of those. I think the ages between 11 and 16 are the preparation phase. So here's where we want to prepare activities related to understanding self and, sorry, I can't find my mouse here. And getting along with others, right? So we plan and teach more refined skills at this age and more aerobic fitness, using questions and self-awareness and feedback process. Providing opportunities for leadership in a group setting. Peer groups become increasingly important, you know, at this phase too. And then capable of formal operational thought, enabling them to understand general principles. I don't know, like, please feel free to chime in if you have anything to add. I've not really worked with, I'm pretty new at working with the 11 to 16-year-olds. So I come back to this list a lot, especially because during the day I'm with my college teams. And then in the evenings, I'm coaching men and women. So twice a week, I'm working with this age group. And, you know, for me, it's changing gears a lot, which I'm sure you all are. But yeah, keen as to have any more tips, you know, being new at this age group as well. And then the last
tips,
one.
just so you know, we actually do start tackle. We have a 10U program as well. So it's a 10U, a 12U, and then what we consider middle school, and then high school.
For
NCYRU.
Really?
Yeah. So we're actually dealing with kids, which it is a big jump that we see often, right, in that 10U space.
Right.
And the good news is, if they're like a younger 10U, the birth date, it goes by school, so like the September 1st birth date. So you usually get, it's an older 10 when they jump. So I think maturity wise, it really helps that. And then you have the flexibility. Kids can always play at an age above them, except high school. And so it's nice because if you have a really advanced 12-year-old, you can move them up to play with their 14U or middle school team.
Right.
So it gives you that flexibility. And then just so you know, you're also aware, we do co-ed at those ages as well.
At 11 and to 16?
So middle school boys is not co-ed. We think that's where like the aggression and like it becomes unsafe at that age. We have had a handful of girls who played co-ed,
right?
But as middle school girls, the program's growing. We're able to actually at Raleigh hold our own with our middle school girls program, and then they play. We allow girls to play down one age group. So if they're 13, they can still play on 12U.
Ah, okay. I mean, that's what it's like in New Zealand as well. It's co-ed, I think, up until 13 as well. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's
I'd
just
love
that where it becomes unsafe for them, you know,
yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tiffany, high school's 5 years back home, remember, and
Yeah.
all rugby is played in high schools. There's no club at that level as well, too.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. All right, and then this last bit here is, obviously the performance phase, 16 and onwards. I found this very helpful to, especially because, a lot of players, especially my Eagles pool, found rugby at college. And, the mindset and the values with the typical American sports are very different. So even like things like leadership and the individualism, it was, I found it very interesting learning just the mindset of some of the athletes coming in, because where I came from with all the different phases, it was always about team effort, the collective. So I always think that if rugby, like I'm real passionate about growing rugby at the youth to perform at the highest level. So yeah, that's really helpful. I'd love to, if things open up, I'd love to come down and check out your guys' programs. So again, with the various programs we have, I don't know if anyone has anything to add to this list, but ways to be COVID conscious, and again, reading the comfort levels of the players and their parents, right? So something that for me is the less pressure to attend. I'm very vocal about that because I understand, especially in my youth program, there's peer pressure. I've heard some of my players say, hey, we're going to text so-and-so to come down, but I'm reminding them, with the pandemic, to make sure that everyone's comfortable when they do show up. My college team asked for each student player to arrive with a negative COVID test result that was dated no more than 7 days prior coming on campus. So if that's something you guys find might be useful. And then I said to Amanda a couple of days ago that I am not doing any contact at all. So we're doing variations of flag and lots of touch, right? But again, that's after you do your sanitizing, right? You're checking temperatures. When we're really close, our masks stay on. They complained about it for the first couple of days, but just obviously reading the news and just reminding them of how serious this is and the risks. They all come on board eventually. And to be fair, they're just getting a little bit fitter because the breathing is a bit restricted. And then, giving them the option or the opportunity mid activities to walk away, have a breather if they need. We usually share water bottles, but now, asking people to bring their own, and then just lots of sanitizing. Yeah, it's all trial and error. I'm fortunate that, my team, we haven't had any news to change the way that we're operating at the moment, but, we're all seeing on the news, everything's evolving. So I'd love to hear from anyone else that's doing anything different. Yeah, again, just to make sure that we're all sort of safe out there.
Are you running in small pods? And if so, what's your ratio of players to coach?
Yeah, so at first with my youth group, we've been sort of training for the last 6 weeks. And the first 3 weeks, I kept them in lines of 4, right? And just doing hands up and down the pitch. But now I'm actually putting them all together as long as they have their masks on. So now we're doing 4 corners, now we're doing a little bit of touch. But in saying that, I do only have about 12 players coming. So if more players came along, I would probably look at doing something different, probably splitting them up again. But at the moment, because I only have 12, I feel, again, it's reading it, but I've been allowing them to play touch as long as their masks are on.
That's sorry, I missed the whole mask thing, which is different what we've been doing here. So we've keeping them 6 feet apart with no mask though. So I guess the mask is what's the variable. So what is your how has the players reacted to wearing masks, and did they just have to get used to it, or
Yes.
What's your feedback? Okay.
Yeah, so the first two or three sessions, and you'll find some of them came with strict instructions from their parents, right? Coach, I can't take my mask off. I'm like, yep, that's completely fine. So there's always one or two, but they come on board eventually because, you know, in the end, they still want to play. But yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment, is everyone has to have their masks on if we're within 6 feet. It just means more breaks. Cool. So like I said before, in terms of skills, rugby skills, I haven't tried tackling or doing the breakdown, but we are looking at potentially bringing in the tackle bags soon, and just having, yeah, the big ones, you know, they can stand by themselves. So it's a lot of conditioning, but then again, it's wiping it down and just making sure that each student, you know, feels safe. We're not quite there yet, so we're still honing in on the 3 skills that we're working on, which is ball handling, running lines, and the kicking. My favorite 3 anyway, because again, you know, my mindset of the rugby is you're not meant to try and go into contact. You know, we want to play an evasive sport. So like I said, these times are actually beneficial for someone like myself, who I get to really, go into detail like I don't get the opportunity to when we're in competition. So these are actually the only 3 skills that we've been working on recently. And because 2 6 feet apart really highlighted that not all my players can consistently make that pass on the run. So we were forced to keep the mask on, and, you know, it was their decision. I was like, hey, look, if you can show me that you can do this pass that far apart, and they couldn't. So yeah, you can find fun ways to sort of bring them around to be on the same page. So yeah, we'll dive into each of these drills. And so now we're kind of coming away from the COVID part. So please feel free to chime in. Again, you've done all your checks, you're comfortable with who you have. And if you can do these using the number that you're comfortable as well, that works, right? In New York, it's real hard to find space, you know, big enough space for us to even split the groups into various pods. So we've had to be a bit more creative. And I've had a day where I asked the boys to come, you know, the first hour, and then asked the women's team to come on the second hour. But most of the time, especially for Monroe College, I train them both at the same time, unless we're doing contact. So yeah, let's get into the fundamentals, right? So running lines, real big for me. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on these, because I don't hear them a lot, you know, being talked about. Even a few of the camps that I've been to, we go straight into passing the ball and, you know, standing in 4 lines. But oftentimes, even when I say running wide lines to some of the players, they don't know what I'm talking about. So I always, even at my college team, I like to see them, what their body's like with the hands, ball in both hands, right? And seeing how they move, how confident they are, change of speed. So yeah, we'll just get into it. Running lines, running with the ball, running wide lines, and then running and support are the main things we're focusing on. So purpose, obviously, to be evasive, right? Footwork and change of pace to pressure the defenders, to engage and fix defenders. And then running and support is to be an option for the ball carrier and a threat to the defense. So I'm just going to go through them, guys. Please chime in if any questions or anything to add. But purpose for running is, I feel it's something that I'm having to work with a lot, especially with my youth group, because they all want to do the fancy pass, and a lot of them don't come off the mat first. So it's something I really, really drill into them. And then obviously the key factors, right? Ball in 2 hands, you're running towards the defender is something as well that, even when in my time with the Eagles, you know, the language is outside shoulder. And then we're finding that some of the players aren't realizing that the outside shoulder is tracking, right? So then they're drifting unintentionally, but it's running to the defender so that they're fixed, right? And then it's last minute footwork, which is what the Y line is, right? You're coming up the middle, always go for it, and then your options are left or right instead of a V line, right? I find that using words like footwork to confuse a defender, it gets my youth team excited because they're all about trying to, now they're like, oh yeah, what can I do? And they try and visualize how, when it comes to their turn, how they can trick and manipulate the defense. Obviously, support runner, we have to always remind them, right? I like to start my team flat, especially for turnover balls. So reminding them that when they create that depth, right? It's all about, you can't leave at the same time because you don't have that depth already starting on an angle, right? Like when we all start learning rugby, it's all about aligning ourselves so we can see the jersey of the player, the number on the jersey. But I like to make mine more dynamic, right? Changing the visuals so that they can read where their teammate is, where the defense is, and what they need to do to create that depth. And then, yeah, accelerate into space. And then the person in support, right? Being vocal about their position. We all know this, specific, right? Left or right. And then even options, okay? I like my youth team love this sort of stuff because I'm empowering that second player. Go, it's not just the ball carrier. You can go, hey, you got options left, you got options right. You're helping that the person with the ball because they're the one under pressure, right? With defense coming on them. So by them being their eyes and their ears to help them out and early, it puts less pressure on the ball carrier, and they can make better decisions. Is that cool, guys? So session planning, with the ball in hand, some of you guys are probably doing this already. So again, running around cones, poles, we can all assume that anyone can put a ball in their hand and run, but it's really, really important. Whatever you want your players to do during game time, you have to give them the opportunity to do it at practice. And some of them are so little, it might take you 10 minutes, but give them those reps and let them feel what it feels like for themselves, so they can have the opportunity to get that muscle memory in as well. And then 1v1, that's how I get them doing the Y drill, right? So going up and then really testing themselves with their footwork and just being honest, right? And I think for those ones too, you can be real specific with your defenders of what you want, right? Reminding them that the outcome is footwork, telling them you either want a soft defense or you want them to launch hard, but working both sides of the ball as well is really, really helpful. And that being competitive and putting pressure on the offense, I think helps them learn it pretty fast as well and gets that competitive juices going. Switching.
Real quick, going back to your slide before when you were talking about you start them actually flat and make them get deep and support. Does that work super well for your 11-year-olds to teach that kind of from the get-go, or do you have to work them into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the 11-year-olds, I think you're probably looking at big motor skills. So for them, it's just more taking the ball up more confidently and trying to be evasive and not get touched, right? Because that footwork, I think, needs to be developed because now you're working with the little muscles. I think for the 11-year-olds, I would probably start them. I have them coming around the corner, actually, coming around the corner and doing a little weave. This is terrible. I knew I should have had some videos prepared. or had some kids with me just to sort of demonstrate.
Where's your whiteboard? I need your whiteboard.
Yeah, you're right. I should have done a whiteboard. That's a good question. Has anyone else on the call sort of done any work with that you think creates that depth?
Well, the only thing that I would say, and my husband's sitting there, who's the reigning, I guess, because we didn't have a season last year, 12U state champions. And so what we struggle with is teaching them evasive running, but then what they do is run sideways. So we really struggle at that 12U age group. We've learned that we literally just teach them to run straight, because when they go to 14U, we can teach them the evasive running. And I feel like it's that switch. Some kids automatically get it. but we really struggle with, they think evasive running means running sideways.
Yeah.
So I'd love any tips to kind of
shorten the width of where they're working. So keep squeezing down the width. If they're drifting or they're just trying to run around, just do whatever you're doing in a much smaller width area.
Sandy, you can also use poles. Instead of using the tackle bags right now because of COVID, we've been bringing out the the poles you would use for sprinting. You can put those up and make sure they're running their lines and how they finish with the, so if we're targeting inside shoulder or outside shoulder, obviously making sure that they follow that direction and they finish their line inside that pole. So there's no coaches there. And then the wild lines, you can do the same thing. To me, the U10s and U12s do really great. It's really the terminology. So if you stack two kids and then you have them call in or out, then you kind of have them run the wild lines, and then you can add, if you want to work with a scrum off or a coach pass the ball, and then you can add like a coach that stands behind the pole and you can step into the channel. So that way kids are working in and out, and then obviously the 9 has to make, or the pass has to make a decision who gets the ball. So.
Got it.
You do it old school like John Kerwin did, run at trees, step trees. Seriously, that's what he did. He ran at trees and stepped trees. And he was the first big winger to become the big famous winger.
Yeah.
It's almost like we practice this and they do it at practice, and then you get an open field with, defenders coming aggressively and from different directions, and then they change. And it's like everything we've been literally practicing goes out the window. And so I'm just trying to think of different ways we can get them to understand that so they can put it into gameplay. And I also realize it's, maturity level at 12 years old or 10 years old or whatever. So, I mean, just getting them to actually run in the right direction can be challenging. Much less, I'm thinking about 10 years too. But yeah, I like that idea. And Andy and Dave, if you actually do that drill with the polls on Saturday, if you can video it and text it to me, that would be awesome, because I would love to see that.
It should be on the Red Hawks website. There's one that Sean O'Leary did. I think it was last year. He came through one of our camps, and it's one with tackle bags, and you'll see George O'Brien throwing the ball, and you'll see 2 kids stacked and they're running the wild line. So it should be up on our video somewhere.
Thanks.
That's a good one. Thanks, guys. I'll probably help. That'll help me out too. What we got here? Cool. So, it sounds like we've covered some of those already. You guys have some ideas of, again, encouraging your players to run with the ball first, right? Like, let them have a go, and then you build on with looking for the options for the pass. But I think for me, it's like we're all doing the same skills, but I often come across some coaching where it's, they start very static. So, and I guess for the younger ones, it gets a bit tricky, but I'm all about using color codes, right? Having them to read and react, using different sort of triggers for them to start, right? It's not always picking up the ball from the ground, but using a whistle or clapping is something that I've used as well. And then, so I mentioned here in the last bullet here, so increase or decreasing the space, which someone else mentioned on the call. All right, anything else you guys suggest for these running activities? We kind of covered all of it. Sweet. All right, and then ball handling is something that we're working on a lot as well. Everyone's saying this, but again, the players still forget it, and like to your point, was it you, sorry, Amanda, that was talking about how you do it all in practice, but when it goes to game, it goes out the window. And believe it or not, that still happens at the Premiership as well. So for me, at Monroe College especially, I get a lot of players who are from football, right, from basketball, and they all come in and stand there with the ball in their hand. They're all good with the spire and the pass, but then when you're doing it on the run, they forget that your pass is only as good as your catch. So we do a lot of activities where we're asking them to snatch the ball out of the air, right? Be a bit more urgent, because the earlier you can get that ball in your hands, obviously the earlier you can make decisions and form a good pass. And then even the pop, the spin, like any game where you're allowing them just to sort of play around with the ball, with, you know, not just the spin, not spinning at that age, but, you know, like not just a side to side passing, but popping it, rolling at them, you know, opportunities for them to just pick it up. Catching high balls, that's a big thing. I was talking to someone the other week, and they're like, you know, because we don't have a kicking game here, especially, you know, in the women's clubs, it's getting there. You'll find that even with the WPL, a lot of kickoffs, you know, the balls go to ground. So I always think that at the youth, I'm real big on throwing high balls, you know, getting them used to and confident under catching it. And then the clearing pass too is a skill that a lot of players come to our college and then they're having to learn it. And I get it, because at high school you don't want to specialize, but I think giving them an opportunity and giving them a few pointers of how to make that pass, you know, so that they can, if they're good at it or confident, you know, they can go into college and put their hand up for that position they need. Yeah, just lots of opportunities for them to explore. Anything I missed here, guys? All right, so again, purpose. I like to always start my practices with reminding the players, you know, why handling is so important. So catching the ball so the attack can continue, right? To maintain continuity by passing to a teammate in a better position. This one happens, I'm having to remind the players a lot, because at the college and even in some of the club teams, you get a lot of people outside calling for the ball, you know, and I pause it and I'm like, what space do you see, right? Are you in a better position? Because all you're doing is putting your ball carrier under pressure. They think something's on, and then it's a backwards pass, and sometimes we're losing meters. So I think language is really important about why you call for the ball, like what you've identified, what cues you see, right? And understanding that it's all about supporting that ball carrier, what's best. Yeah. So key factors: early catch, mentioned that before, snatching in the air, and then just little things like extending the arms to the ball, right? Watching that ball to your hands. You know, if you find that you're going through an activity and they're just dropping it, you know, and a lot of the times we can say it's not focused, but you can be real specific. You go, are you putting your hands up? You can, sometimes I pull my phone out, you know, and I film it, and then I just turn it around and go, have a look. Like both times you dropped it, it's because you weren't reaching for the catch, right? Your hands were down by your pockets or whatever it is. Like, you'll always find that if they follow, you know, these fundamentals, most of the time they'll be successful, especially if there's no defense in front of them, you know. So holding them accountable and just getting them into the habit, right? Hands up towards the ball, going towards the ball. And then, yeah, giving them little tips. So obviously rotating your upper body, keeping your hips square. You know, these are all pointers that, you know, we've read about these a lot. We've heard it from all the coaches, but I think what's important is actually, and I know it's a read, right? Sometimes they just want to have fun. But again, during this time where we're not competing, right? We don't have a game that we need to win this weekend. You can afford to pause it and go, hey, all of those 5 drop balls were because of these reasons, right? And give them the opportunity to try and fix it. Yeah. Any other guys, any sort of input on that? Jeez, time's flying. Sweet. All right, so session planning. Again, these are just some of the activities that I like to use. It's always skill-based, right? So some games I've made up because I'm like, this is the skill I want to work on. So what sort of games can I do so they're doing that, you know, they're repeating that skill as often as possible. So Keep Away is a game that we used a lot for the Eagles. And I use a lot for Monroe College for the WPL, and you just call it a different thing, right? For the youth team, you can call it tag or flag, but giving them an opportunity to just be urgent, work together as a team. Feel free to change the direction, right? Don't always go from post to post, like change it up, go sideline to sideline. Because again, you know, rugby is such a fluid game that sometimes if you repeat the image in front of them, right, yet you're practicing the skill, they get really good at practicing that skill just for that particular frame, right? Just for that. So if you flip it on them, right, now they're looking around and they're trying to figure out how to coordinate, right, how to still execute that skill in a different sort of setting. And you can do that by, you know, someone's mentioned making the space smaller, bigger, putting some defense on them, giving different triggers, you know, not always using the same thing, not always using a whistle. But yeah, just change it up on them, give them different things so they're having to think very quick, right? Read what's in front of them and then react, right? But between that, also communicating. So yeah, lots of things. And you sometimes, you know, you can't really do it all at once. So it's like breaking it down through the session. And at the end of the session, you finish with a game where you're sort of incorporating all of the skills. And then the last, you know, again with COVID, kicking is something that I never kicked, but you know, it's such an underused skill, you know, especially in the women's game. So it's something that we talk about a lot, that we want to improve and use often, but it's taking that time to coach it, right? So I've coached a player with a soccer background, just reading off, you know, something or using a video and go, hey, look, these are the key pointers. It's like, you know, hip over the ball, swing, you know, whatever the thing, whatever the key factors for that particular kick. And because they had that soccer background, they were able to incorporate into their skills, and they did it really well, you know, and they became our kicker for the team. But it's just that beautiful thing about rugby where some of these, like a lot of these skills are just coachable, right? And it's just giving those players a go, and it's letting them practice and using their experience, and yeah, helping them out. Some of them will be good at it, some of them won't be good at it. I mean, I can grab her just because I know how to, you know, I'm coordinated enough to have my foot, you know, kick the ball on the tip of it into the ground, but I won't grab her in a game. Place kick, that's something that's coachable, you know, again, like during these times, you can really like get into these skills. And for a coach too, it was really encouraging for me to teach a skill that I've not done myself, right? But again, using the resources that I have, videos, books, you know, and just giving it to them. And it's like, wow, like trusting that process and seeing this player execute something. And then obviously, if you have access to players who can kick, you know, inviting them for a session and letting them sort of give some tips. Because yeah, you know, the annoying bit as a coach is you repeat something 100 times and then you get a guest coach come in and say it once and your players are like, oh, and you're sitting there going, yo, I've been saying this to you this whole time. But yeah, so punts, drops, grubber, place kicks, right? Purpose to apply pressure to the opposition, you know, by attacking space behind and gaining territory. So like when I explain that to my teams for the first time, you know, how kicking is such a tool, their eyes light up, right? Because they're competitive. They're like, wait, that's another way to gain territory. That's another way to take away space, right? And to apply pressure, regain possession, you know, on the high kicks. And then obviously kicking along the ground for the grubbers, if you want to do a cheeky one, running through the defense, you know, gathering yourself. And then obviously the place kick to convert a try or score from penalty. I don't know if, who was it that's coaching the U11? What do you guys do with those conversions? You're not converting, right?
No,
No posts.
yeah, and 11 or 12 you play on half a pitch.
Okay.
And run sideways. So I mean, yes, they run sideways, but they run.
But you use sideline. That would be funny. I think it's I forget the name of the organization in the UK, but they send out like little posts and little balls with little. And I was wondering, I've not coached that age before, but I think it's cute. It would be awesome to to teach someone at that age.
Oh, Tiff, when you are come stay with me, you're totally coaching that age group. So.
I know, I'd love to. I think I'd just run around with them instead. All right, so, oh yeah, we went through the session planning. So again, focus on one kick type per person, right? What I've done is pair them up, just have them 10 yards apart, you know, little punts to each other, because again, controlling, right? Understanding the power required, you know, behind each kick distance wise, but just letting them have a feel of it, right? It's surprising players that, you know, you see with great hands, you know, good footwork, and then you get them to kick a ball and you're just like, you just assume that they would know, which is, you know, lesson learned. So I don't do that anymore. I just let them all pair up, and some of them look a bit nervous because, you know, they like to do things that they're good at. But again, it's giving them the opportunity to just try it, right? Try it in a fun environment, and some will be great at it. Some will surprise you. We play force back a lot in Monroe, and our best kicker is this player that was a prop at his high school. And he said his coach never let him kick, but he's incredible. So, I mean, I don't know if I'll let him kick, probably. But, you know, just seeing him have a go, and then everyone else around him was confident to have a go as well. Yeah, make up some games, again, just to give them the opportunity to kick. We've played touch where you can only do one arm, right? You can only kick to each other, just mix it up. And then the last bit, wait, did we have any questions or input on the kicking? We are making good time. Okay, and then the last bit here, for me, this was really important. I still use it as a coach, right? Visualization, but as a player, it really, really helped me. I was surprised, you know, when I was playing at the Eagles that a lot of the players never really watch that much rugby. So for me, I was like, well, how do you know what these moves are, you know, are meant to look like? Or so that was one of my biggest things whenever we were in camp, is I'd somehow find a game and you know, get everyone to sit down and be like, let's just watch this game. And, you know, I think it's so important for you to see, you know, what your coaches are trying to coach or teach, right? And then you can go and implement it yourself. And just having heroes, right? Just having people to look up to, you know, create that aspirational vibe. I remember a coach in New Zealand, the All Blacks would pull off a cool move in the weekend, and we'd go to training on Tuesday and ask the coach if we can do the move. You know, these are the All Blacks, right? And the coach is like, you can do everything once, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we're going back to my moves. And, you know, I was really grateful for that coach, because without, you know, learning now what his style was, he was very empowering, and he always let us explore it and have a go. And I think for those reasons, when it really mattered and he was like, this is what you're doing, yeah, we trusted him, you know. It was all part of that, that development. And I also think like mental rehearsal is really important. Something we used to do before each game is, as a players, right, we would circle up and we'd select someone to sort of talk through, right? Kick off. So the ball's kicked off, you know, and our eyes were closed, right? It was caught by so-and-so, right? She's taken it forward, she's gone into ground, so-and-so cleared over. And for me, I don't know if this works for everyone else, I actually feel like I'm in there, right? Like that's me catching the ball, and even down to the detail, like the nerves of catching a high ball while your mates are watching, you know, it's like your one job is to catch it, secure possession, and then anticipating that impact, right? So I think mental rehearsal is so important, because you almost go through all the emotions, you know, as if it's really happening. And then when it did happen, it's like you can go straight to, you know, a logical response, because the emotions are out of the way. And I felt like that even as a coach, right? As a captain at first, I used to think, you know, if my team was down by 100 and we're behind the post, like, what would I say, right? And I used to picture my mates like not even touching because they're mad at each other and their heads are down. Like, what would I say in that moment to get them to come back together, right? And just finish strong. And I would like practice. And some people say, why would you think that's a negative thing? But for me, it was important to try and just prepare for everything, right? I did the same if we were up by 100, right? For beating a team. And sometimes, our players, our teammates will get complacent, right? Probably be a bit smart. And it's just like getting them to regroup. Even, as I was managing it, it's reminding them, hey, we still got to play our best, right? And respect the opponent. So I found that, really, really helpful. And I think what it helps too, and you can use this however you want for your players, but as a coach, I went through the same thing, right? Like finals week, players are not really doing what they do, so you're going through it, and how will you respond? How do you want to respond? And I found that was very helpful as well, because when things happened, I was a bit more prepared. Yeah, so I think the last thing, before we get into questions, and I picked this picture because this was our game in Ireland at the 2017 World Cup. I'm over to the left, so you can't see me, but we decided to wear the jackets, right? Because, so the night before, Richie Walker and I sat down, and I was like, I think I want us to do the advance on the haka, right? So for those who don't know, the World Rugby laws are you can't go past the 10 meters from the haka, right? So I think, was it France that was fined? I don't know if anyone knows this.
Wales.
Okay.
Wales did it first at Carter Farms, and I think France got fined later, but yeah.
Yeah, so what we decided to do was we were going to start 15 meters back so we could advance the 5 and then stop at the 10. So Rich and I were like, yeah, I want our players to be prepared. I've faced the haka a lot. I've performed that, not this haka, but, growing up in New Zealand, you do, you embrace the culture. So your schools, there's always a haka. So I've done it before, and I understand what it's about, right? They're calling on their ancestors, they're preparing to go to war. And I figured it was a privilege for me to understand that. So we had a meeting with the USA women. I was like, look, what we're going to do is channel that energy, right? We're going to call on our ancestors too. But I think to accept the challenge, right? Let's start at 15, let's go up to the 5. And then what we did the night before was we had Richie perform the haka to us in the car park in Ireland at the university. And it was echoing and it was mean. And we were all so tight, and like, it was Richie by himself, but because of the echo, it just filled up the room, right? And me knowing what they're saying, I don't speak Māori, but you feel it, right? And then what was really cool is everyone in our squad felt it, right? The USA players. So the next day I was like, if that's our feeling, we need something to take off, right? Before kickoff, like just a gesture. Again, like this goes back to your team. Like, what's something that you can do if there's a knock on, or if there's something that you're taking on board, like what's an action, right? And I know some of you guys probably have something like a tap on the head, or anyway, so we decided to do the jacket, and everything happened exactly as we imagined, right? So we started back, and as we advanced, like the Kiwi players, their eyes got bigger, their tongues got longer, they got louder, and our girls were just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And it was such an incredible experience, but I was very, very grateful that, we were able to really process how we wanted to respond, to make sure it reflected, how we wanted to accept that challenge. So yeah, I can't stress enough how valuable it is to imagine, your game. And even now with COVID, right, some of my teams were not getting together at all. So we're doing a lot of visual, with watching games and just talking about it. Like all of that helps, right? So it's just as important as your mental, or as the physical training. But I wanted to share that with you guys because, it's something that I'll never forget. And I'm very good friends with the captain of the New Zealand coach, and she admitted, she's like, oh man, when you guys walked forward, we were pissed. And I was like, you know, but they understood that was us being respectful and accepting that challenge. So yeah, anywho, who's got questions? How long we got? We got 5 more minutes. We good?
At least you didn't sing Waltzing Matilda after haka.
You what?
At least you didn't sing Waltzing Matilda after the haka.
Oh, who did that?
The Australians started doing it in the 90s. They had John Williamson walk out with the guitar and they get the crowd to sing after the haka. It was quite funny.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, rugby was just different those days, eh?
Oh God, it was amusing.
No questions from you guys? This group usually has something.
I think this is Dave Krasner from the Red Hawks. I think maybe there's no questions because everything that you said made a ton of sense. A lot of what you're presenting and saying is what we're doing. We're also cherishing the moment. We've spent time probably at each session talking about how lucky we are to be out here, and I think it's a little reinvigorating for the players and for the coaches that, you know, we just get to be doing what we love again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. It's it's nice to sort of be with a different circle as well. You know, we get I get sick of working with I know Steve's on the call, but it's nice to work with a different group and sort of confirm that, you know, we're all sort of doing similar things as well.
It was a great presentation, Tiffany. It's great hearing a good accent again, even though it's North Shore.
Oh, thank you. Is that Coach Kiwi?
Yeah. I look forward to. I sent you a Facebook friend thing. It's James Roberts, but I'll see you when you come down to Raleigh.
Yeah, please. I think you guys got some good league down there too.
Rugby league.
Yeah.
I've got an ex-triple international mate of mine living down here, Brian Liama, but there's not much league being played down in this area. Brian played Australia, New Zealand, and Western Samoa, and played for Waratahs briefly too. So.
All right. Yeah, you have to introduce that.
He's a good Mangere boy. So none of you north of the bridge people.
Hey Tiff, it's Sunny. Yeah, thanks. And I'm so glad you didn't understand Coach Kiwi either, because none of us do. So the fact that like you didn't understand him either makes us all feel.
I don't know if my accent's changed, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't sound Kiwi anymore. But
I don't say anything.
But no, thanks a lot for really breaking it down and giving us some ideas to think about. I really liked your last point of like kind of having this reset, especially with what we see is that 12U and 14U where that maturity, you know, a lot of them are literally just starting puberty. And so while the girls, you know, are more experienced in the 12U and that's when they're really going through it, but the 14U, you know, with the boys and seeing that it's really like they're really hard on themselves, right? Yeah. And so there's just a lot of emotions going on there, and so it's just nice to have that kind of reset. And how do you like get them out of their own head, right? Really like sharing that story. I did have a question though. I don't want to drag on the haka, but why do they do it? Particularly the women, not the men, but why do the women's team do it after now and they don't do it before a lot of the matches? Is that like more in sevens as they do it after just because timing?
So only in sevens. They only do it in sevens if they win a tournament. 15's always before the game.
Okay.
Sevens, the men and ladies will only do it at the end of the tournament and only if they win.
Okay, got it.
That's been that way for long time. Since we've had a national sevens team almost.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. I just always wondered. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, I want to say just appreciate and thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to visit and meet you all in person, you know, so we can yeah, so we can do the thing and get our youth some more game time and, you know, help grow the game at the adult level. Yeah, it all makes a difference, right? So
Thanks so much, Tiff. We really appreciate you being willing to take the time to chat with us.
of course. All right. Have a good night,
Thanks,
guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. It was nice seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. See you all.